If your goal is to build wealth using the VA home loan benefit, I have, in my opinion, the number one strategy in order for you to do it. You see, a lot of veterans think that their VA home loan benefit is only available to buy one property. And a lot of them also think that they can only buy a single family home, a townhome, or a condo. But what many don't know is available to them is being able to use the VA loan to buy a multi unit property. Essentially, you buying a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex, you only living in one of those units and then renting out the other units to help offset your mortgage payment. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly that strategy and show you how you can start building wealth using your VA home loan benefit in 2024. Before I jump into the video, I just had to let you guys know that me and my team get calls every single day from veterans all across this great country who are trying to navigate the VA loan process. So if you find yourself stuck or you just want to get help from a team of individuals who specialize in helping veterans go through this process, give us a call or shoot us a text. We're happy to help. Let's talk about some of the perks of using your VA loan from a general perspective. One of the most well-known one is going to be the down payment requirement, and you probably already know that. The VA loan technically has no down payment associated to it when it comes to a requirement. This is super powerful because it allows you to have a lower barrier of entry in order to be able to use your VA loan. When using like an FHA loan, you're going to have to put 3.5% down. Conventional, the minimum is about 3% down. And then USDA, even though it does not have a down payment requirement, their requirements in terms of their guidelines are actually much more strict. So though while it tries to emulate VA loans, it's nothing like it. And I'll get to that in a second. VA loans do not have a credit score requirement, which is super powerful. Some of the lenders that you probably have heard of out there are going to tell you 620, 640, or 660, but me and my team can go as low as 580. Now, talking about the VA's requirement, here's what you need to understand. Even though the VA does not have a credit score requirement associated with it, it's lenders who do loans, not the VA. The VA only guarantees the loan, which means that they're the ones that only determine who's actually eligible to use their VA home loan benefit. It's the lenders like us who determine how much money they're going to loan out to you based on your ability to meet their qualifying standards. The next one is going to be debt to income ratio. If you ever tried to buy a house before, you've probably heard of this phrase. Now, debt to income ratio is something that's based on really how much money you have coming in versus how much money that you have going out. Conventional loan debt to income ratio is going to be 50% or less. FHA is 57% or less, and USDA is 45% or less. But VA actually does not have a debt to income ratio associated with it. So backtracking to earlier when I talked about how USDA tries to mimic VA, here's where it sets itself apart when it comes to the VA loan. On a USDA loan, you're going to have a 45% or less debt to income ratio where the VA uses a thing called residual income. And this is based on first where you're located geographically. There's 4 regions that breaks down and encompasses the country. And then it's based on your household size. So depending on how many people are in the household will determine how much the VA expects you to have left over after all of your bills are paid. Simple way to understand this is the more people that are in the household, the more the VA expects to have left over after all the bills are paid. And that's simply just because there's more mouths to feed, there's more responsibility, and there's more to take care of versus it just being one individual in the home. That's less people to have to take care of, so less money is a little bit more acceptable in that case. So that's one of the things that makes it very powerful because I've seen veterans with a 70% debt to income ratio be able to buy a house where had they been doing any other type of loan, they would have not been able to qualify at all. So that's very powerful. The other one is going to be private mortgage insurance. If you're using any type of loan, like a conventional loan or FHA loan, they're going to have private mortgage insurance associated with it. FHA is no matter what your down payment is, but conventional is anytime you put less than 20% down, you have private mortgage insurance. VA, you do not have private mortgage insurance ever, no matter how you use it. Now, I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about some of the perks of buying multi-unit property. My favorite is obviously going to be building wealth. We talked about this in the beginning of the video. That's the whole point of this video is the fact that you can build wealth using your VA loan. And the main one is going to be because you can house hack with your VA loan. And house hacking is essentially where you are living in one of the units and then you're renting out the other units to offset your mortgage payment. Now, house hacking is not only done on a multi-unit property, it's also done on a single family home. But here's the thing. When you're house hacking a single family home, let's say your mortgage payment is $3,000 and you're buying a 3-bedroom home. When you are house hacking and you're going to rent out your other rooms in that home, you actually cannot use the potential rental income to help you qualify. because you're only buying a single unit property. The only time this applies is when you are buying a multi-unit property. So in this situation, the property maybe costs you $5,400, which is significantly more, but that property could be generating rental income, thus lowering your obligation in terms of the ability for you to qualify. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Let's say you have that multi-unit property, and in this case, there is 3 units, and you're living in one of those units, and then you're renting out unit number 2 for $1,800, and then unit number 3 for another $1,800. This makes your total monthly payment now become $1,800 because you're receiving $3,600 every single month in rental income from those 2 units, all while you're living in one of them. But here's the thing that you need to understand when it comes to your ability to qualify. When it comes to your ability to qualify, one of the major guidelines that you need to follow is going to be the 75% rule. This is a snippet directly from the VA handbook, and they are going to require that the lender use only up to 75% of the potential rental income towards your ability to qualify, which means we need to break this down a little bit more. So we have our multi-unit property with our net rental income of $1,800 and our monthly payment of $5,400. Now, this property is receiving $3,600 a month in rental income. When you add in the VA's qualification of 75%, that means you're only using 75% of the $3,600 in rental income towards your ability to qualify, which means the qualifying rent now is going to be $2,700. This means that your ability to qualify or support a mortgage payment must be at least $2,700. So even though you are receiving the $3,600 every single month or will be receiving that amount, when it comes to your ability to qualify, the VA is going to require you to be able to support at least that difference of or at least 25% of your overall rental income. Before I get into some of the most important details about the multifamily with your VA loan, I have to ask, if you're getting value from this video, can you do me a favor and hit the like button down below? And also consider subscribing to the channel. This was created for you, the veteran, to get all the information that you need to know about the VA home loan benefit completely free. Another major rule that you're going to have to follow is going to be the 6 months in terms of cash reserves. And this is so that way you have the ability to support your mortgage payment in the event that maybe you have to evict somebody, or maybe you have a case where your property has some vacancies and there's less risk now on you because you have some money set aside to be able to support that property. One thing I almost forgot to mention was in regards to the first bullet point on that last slide, where it talks about the reasonable likelihood of success as a landlord. What this bullet point essentially means is if you have never owned rental property before and you are now going to be buying a multi-unit property with your VA loan, the VA is going to look at this a little bit differently. They're going to now require essentially for you to have some form of property management in place to help make sure that you're better protected and have a higher likelihood of success as a landlord. Now, when having a property manager, this does increase your added cost or expenses every single month. And typically, on average, a landlord will cost about 10% of your rental income. But this is going to be required to be in place for those of you that have never had any experience owning rental property in order for you to pull this off. If you have had experience owning rental property, this will show from your tax returns when we look at the Schedule E to be able to determine that you have had that success, in which we would not need that property manager in place unless you absolutely wanted one. Another thing is going to be how you come up with those cash reserves. You see, the VA is also going to require that the money come from your own funds, which means it cannot be a gift from a family member or from someone else. And also can't be coming from someone who is an interested party, like a credit from the seller, a real estate agent, or anything like that. This has to be reserves that has already been seasoned in your own accounts prior to the time of your loan closing. And the best way to know if it's been seasoned is really it has to have been in your accounts for at least 60 plus days. I would say, to play it safe, closer to the 90-day time frame. If you are taking out equity from an existing property that you already own, that's going to have to also have been seasoned as well, which essentially means if you're going to take out money from a property to try to use that as cash reserves towards a new property, that's a no-go, as you can see from there as well. The next thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to break down a real deal by pulling a property that is currently listed on the MLS. And I'm going to show you a few things to look for when trying to analyze some of these deals in order for you to be better set up for success. Okay, so I have a few properties up on my screen that I'm going to show you and give you an idea of what to expect monthly payment wise, but mainly just to give you an idea of what to look for when going through the process. I have not vetted these properties in terms of seeing if they make sense or not. I'm doing this 100% organically. I just picked them right before I started recording, and I just want to mainly show you guys what to look for. So I live in San Antonio, Texas. It's no secret if you've been watching my channel for more than a day. And this is essentially what a property would look like in terms of, I believe, a fourplex. Fourplex. And when you go down, I personally, again, I should say this in the beginning, I like to use Redfin. It's just more of my personal preference. But when it come down to here, what I like to look for is this section that says location. And this is because it's going to give me a better idea of what the rental income has been for one of those properties that is pre-existing. So I'm going to bring my calculator up over here just to show you what to expect for this particular property. And also a few things I want you to look for. Unit number 1 is telling me how many units bedrooms and bathrooms there are. Same with unit 2, 3, and 4. And it looks like, just from a quick glance, they're all essentially the same unit in terms of overall size. Now, that doesn't mean that they're receiving the same amount in rental income. As you can see, property or unit 1 is $1,500, unit 2 is $1,400, unit 3 is $1,400 again, and unit 4 is $1,400. And this could simply just be because maybe when these initial tenants moved in, this is what fair rent was, and then unit 1 maybe is a more newer tenant. Who knows? But the thing that we're going to do here is we're not going to factor in rental income for all 4 units, because in this situation, you do have to occupy one of those units. So we're only going to be able to use the rental income for 3 of them. So what I'll do is I'm going to use the first 3 units, 15, 14, and 14. So when we do 1,500 plus 1,400 plus another 1,400, that brings the total monthly rental income to $4,300 right there. Now, let's go over to see what this monthly payment would look like. Now, I want to scroll down, not to there. I want to go to right here to get an idea of what this monthly payment will look like. So we are going to factor in our purchase price, which is $850,000. And when it comes to the interest rate, I'm going to go to look and see what the national average data says. And as of April 8th, national average was 6.62. So we're going to go ahead and put that there. I'm going to do 6.625 just because usually it works in eighths versus it just being a general 6.62. So I'm going to do 6.625. That's more kind of a normal metric or normal number that you'll see in terms of a mortgage rate. And then we're going to say that this person has never used their VA loan before. And I'm also going to put that they're not collecting VA disability at all, which means that there's going to be a VA funding fee in which we'll finance that into the loan as well. Now we're going to add this to give us some more options, and then we're going to go back to our property and we're going to look up our property taxes. Man, those are expensive. So $1,701 per month, but this number is actually based on an annual amount. So we'll bring our amount or our calculator back up. 1,701, multiply that by 12. Geez, 20,000. Unfortunately, here in Texas, property taxes are no joke. And we're going to do homeowners insurance, 623, multiply that by 12. Oops, 623, 74, 76. And now go ahead and remove that. And now we should have a better idea of what our monthly payment looks like. So for this property, the total monthly out-of-pocket expense is going to be $7,883.66. Now, remember, we said our monthly rental income was $4,300. How much would you be obligated to pay if you were living in this property? In this situation, you'd be paying about $3,583.66. Now, to some of you, this would more than likely not make sense just from looking at roughly how much you'd be receiving in rental income, because by the time you vacate this property, the chance of you being able to cover that mortgage payment is going to be very difficult. Now, I will say this, thinking that you're going to be able to cover every mortgage payment, especially on a property that you are putting 0 down, 100% financing on, and being able to then turn around and cash flow it on day one when you vacate the property is very hard to do. When you are not cash flowing, that's okay. I have a property that I am not currently cash flowing on right now either because of, again, similar to that upfront amount that I brought into the table, it does not give me the ability to cash flow it as early as I maybe have liked. But what I am thinking about is the big picture. Typically, when someone is going to cash flow on a property, especially on day one, they probably brought a sizable amount to the table. And that's part of what makes it harder to cash flow on day one. So if you're buying property, play the long game, especially if the cash flow is, or the negative equity or a negative payment that you're making is manageable. I'm not telling you to go make a several $1,000 additional payment. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. What I am telling you to do is look at it and do an analysis and see if it makes sense. Because if the mortgage payment is something that you can afford, and that negative amount is something that you can float, rents are going to continue to rise, which means eventually you will be able to cash flow on that property. The next property I want to show you guys to give you another idea on, this one might make more sense, is going to be this one here. Now, this one is listed at 379. I'm just going to round it to 380. And we're going to keep our rate the same at 6.625. Keep the same thing with regards to eligibility, using when you've used the VA loan, the disability amount, funding fee, all of that. We're going to keep all that the same. Now, let's go down to our details about the property, and let's bring up our calculator again, and let's do the property taxes. Property taxes seem to be pretty low on this one, surprisingly. So 3384, and then our homeowner's insurance is 279. Multiply that by 12. 3348. No HOA or anything like that on this guy here, which means we can go ahead and calculate this guy. Total monthly payment $3,046.50. Let's go ahead and just type, or no, I'm not gonna do that just yet. We're gonna go down to look and see. Perfect. Rental amounts. So unit one looks like they're all one bedrooms here. So our rental income for unit one, $860, unit two, $850. And unit 3, $850. So we're only going to do 3, remember, because you are going to be living in 1. This property is making $2,560 per month. Now, we do the $3,046.50 is our payment minus $2,560. You're basically bringing in less than $500. This is a slam dunk deal if it's something that works for you and meets your needs. If obviously you're a single person or have a very small family and okay with being in a 1-bedroom, this would actually be a killer deal that I think I personally would do if I didn't have a family to provide a place for. But this one makes a lot more sense for somebody in terms of the amount that they're paying, because their rental income is covering a large portion, over half of the rental, of the mortgage payment. The last one I want to show you guys is this one here. I want to see if this one makes sense. It's a pretty big payment on this guy, so it might be a little tough, but let's see if it makes sense. So we have our purchase price at $950. We're going to keep the rest of this information the same again, but when we go down to our payment details, let's bring up our calculator again. Property taxes, $1,798. Multiply that by 12, 21,576, and then, that. And then our homeowner's insurance, $697. Multiply that by 12, $83.64. This one is also in an HOA, so keep that in mind, because if that does happen, we need to factor that in as well. This is not very common for it to be in an HOA, but sometimes it does happen. So make sure that you are factoring in that to your analysis so that you don't end up skewing your numbers and then finding yourself coming up short or even in a more of a negative amount than you already were prepared for. So this mortgage payment, $8,852.74. Pretty big payment here. Now let's see if it makes sense when we look at the units. Coming down to here, this one is also a 4-unit, and it looks like unit 1, I'm going to make it to where it's whichever units have the highest rent to income. So I'm going to do 1550, which is what unit 4 is. Looks like unit 3 is 1535 and unit 1 is 1510. Unit 2 was the lowest amount. So your total rental income is 4595. So 8852 and 74 cents minus 4595. That's how much this payment would be in terms of the net amount that you would be responsible for. I look at this one very similar to the other property, that first one that we did. These two just more than likely wouldn't make sense for a lot of people unless you were bringing a down payment, versus a property similar to this or even in that realm or ballpark could make sense. Now, if you are living here in Texas, this is a thing that makes a big difference, is property taxes. As I talked about a little earlier, property taxes make a big part. And this could be something that makes or breaks a deal in other areas as well. But I just use Texas as an example because we have some of the highest property taxes in the country. So these are some real deals that I just wanted to show you guys. So there you guys have it. My number one strategy in order to use your VA loan to build generational wealth. If you want to continue to learn more about the VA home loan benefit, subscribe to the channel and join the community. And if you want to get one-on-one hands-on help from me and my team, give us a call or shoot us a text. We're happy to help.